Hello, my name's Yasmin Euphemia, aka Sugar, and I'm here tonight with.
I'm Beverly. I am UK Fluffy Chick, and we are the founder Sis-Stars of Supporter Sis-Star Network, where our aim is to showcase your skills, your talents, and anything you want to share with us, with our community.
Ashley.
And this evening, we have with us Anneliese. Hello, Anneliese.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us.
Lovely. Thank you for joining us. All right. So I sort of put Annalise on the spot because
As you do.
I was talking to her about what she's been doing at college. I say college, I do apologize, at uni.
Yeah, uni, yeah.
Yeah. So we'd like you just to introduce yourself and say what your subject was and what you went on to do with it.
Yeah. Okay, so as this has been said, I'm Anneliese from East London. At university, for my undergrad, I studied criminology at Swansea University. Really, really enjoyed my time there. Just kind of a brief definition of criminology is kind of the study of crime, who commits it, why they commit it, what kind of punishment is handed down, and why that punishment is handed down. It's a really, really broad subject. That's just kind of a brief definition. After my time at Swansea, I then went on to do my master's at Cambridge University, and that was an MPhil, so an MPhil in criminological research.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Brain box. That's right. That's what me like to say. Young brain them growing and doing things. Okay, so you're saying, what you went on to do with it. So what have you gone on to do with it?
So I think if I'm completely honest, I love being in education. So after I finished my undergrads, I think the master's was my natural next step because I do like that structure that education provides me. Um, so now that my master's is done, I'm kind of floating a little bit. I'm unsure about whether to do a PhD next. A PhD in criminology is on the table. It's kind of like a love-hate relationship. I love education, but my master's was quite challenging. So I'm like, I think I want a bit of a break before I go into a PhD. So right now it's just kind of a floating period. I do have a few options. I can definitely start applying for jobs. But doing a PhD is definitely kind of on my mind.
Okay. Well, with
Okay.
a PhD, it will give you more opportunity, increased opportunities, right? I take it. That's why you
Definitely.
prefer to
Yeah.
go that avenue first, and then the world is your oyster after that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You was gonna say something, Miss Yasmin.
No, no, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just sitting here with my mouth open.
Hey.
Annalise, if you didn't go on to do a PhD,
Mm.
with what you have, what would you be? What would your options be?
I think there's a range, kind of depending on what my interests are. I mean, I could go into the police is always an option, the probation service, things like that. I could maybe take a bit more of a law route and maybe try and get some sort of law degree that kind of supplements my degree that I have already. Yeah, there's a few different things I could potentially go into. Perhaps even like lecturing. Um, at a lecture level, they would prefer you to have a PhD, but there are some universities who will take on maybe like associate lecturers or something like that who have a master's degree like I do. So yeah, there's a few different things. I haven't really made my mind up just yet though.
Okay, okay. When we were talking recently,
Mm.
oh, actually, I might be doing the auntie thing. I might have got my nieces and nephews mixed up. But were
Yeah.
you talking to me about Windrush?
Yes.
Okay, what did you do with that?
Yeah. So at Swansea University, um, I think when I first started university at Swansea, I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go in with criminology. I just knew that I kind of liked the broad definition. But I spent 3 years there, and as I was kind of growing there and learning there, I got an interest in kind of crime orchestrated or by the government or having some sort of government involvement. And specifically, I kind of like a section of criminology called xemiology, which is like the study of social harm.
Xenealogy.
Xemiology with an M.
Demiology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is kind of a broad definition, the study of social harm. And I like using like a social harm lens to look at things, because I think it kind of allows you to look at the exploration of like government omissions. So what didn't they do that they should have done, and all that kind of thing. So it's really interesting. So in my third year, I had to do a dissertation, which is just a big piece of research I had to do. And so I chose to do my dissertation on I chose to do it on something called the hostile environment policy. And so just for some context, that policy is just a policy that aims to make life really, really difficult for undocumented immigrants living in the UK. And that policy kind of collides with the Windrush scandal. So for maybe listeners or viewers who aren't completely aware of what the Windrush scandal is, it's just a scandal that kind of originated in 2018, and it involves people of Caribbean descent being wrongly detained, and in some cases denied rights, and in some serious cases actually being deported to their home countries. So a lot of this started after World War II. Britain actually invited a lot of Caribbean people over to the UK to kind of help rebuild the country, which is what they did. They were instrumental in things like the public transport system, the NHS. They were a huge driver in the NHS. So they came over, really, really helped. And so a lot of parents who came over brought their children. And so in today's world, it's these children of these parents who are kind of being caught up in this because they don't have quote unquote legal documents to be living in the UK. So how that coincides with the hostile environment policy is that this policy says if you don't have the correct documents to live in the UK, you don't have the right to rent, you don't have the right to work, you don't have the right to get a driving license. So that's how the two things kind of coincide. So yeah, that is what I did my dissertation on. I was lucky enough to interview two people affected by the policy. So one was a person who was affected specifically by the Windrush scandal. They came over when they were young on their parents' passport, worked within the NHS for years and years and years. And then when the new laws came in about employers only being able to hire people who were here legally or having to check documents. This person's documents were checked and it was realized that they don't have the correct documents to be working in the UK. They were fired. It got to the point where they were selling shoes to be able to put food on the table, really, really struggling. I also got the chance throughout this research to interview lawyers and activists. So yeah, I interviewed a range of different people. It was a really, really interesting piece of research. Definitely, I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
So
it doesn't actually, well, it's a hostile environment, but I was just going to say it doesn't actually make sense because if you've been here in school all your life, you've gone through college, you've worked for a couple of decades, you've bought your property, you're established in that. How does it come that you don't have the correct documents?
Yeah, I think that is the crazy thing, is that a lot of people who were caught up in the scandal, like you said, have lived here all their lives, worked here, went to school here, grew up here, got jobs. Yeah, so all of the people who came over here, like I said, they've been here for decades and contributed so greatly. Like specifically the lady I spoke to contributed so much to the NHS, only to be fired, and to be told that she's no longer allowed. So yeah, it is kind of mind-boggling how they can be denied all of these rights when they are British citizens.
Because I saw a couple stories like on the TV about some people that was caught up in it, and because one of the person, I think it was some man, he came here with his parents on his parents' passport. When I think that he came here from before Jamaica had even got its independence. So that was when they were technically British. Came here on his parents' passport and went school and everything. They decided now he's not legally allowed to be here, deported him to a country that he don't know nothing about.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really know anybody because he wasn't like, say, was tight with any family over there. And it was, I think in the end, I don't know what happened in the end, he was able to come back, but it was a lot of red tape that he had to go through and enough stress. And, you know, his kids are here, his grandkids are here, and all of this. It was, yeah. So it was a lot of, yeah, it was a difficult time for a lot
and
of
I think
people.
that's the difficult bit, is that a lot of the people caught up in the scandal don't, obviously the Caribbean might be, you know, their home country, but in terms of where they've grown up in the UK. So being sent back is really difficult, because it's like you don't have any roots there, really.
Yeah.
It's definitely you know, kind of an embarrassment for the UK. I think in the aftermath of it, they've kind of set up something called the Windrush Compensation Scheme, which has kind of faced a lot of criticism as well. I think quite a few people have kind of put in their applications, and whilst the applications are being processed, they've actually passed away. So a lot of people who were kind of caught up in the scandal and denied rights, and who are fighting for compensation, their claims are taking so long to go through that they've unfortunately passed without any sort of resolution. So yeah, a real shame.
So what does your situation, other than the obvious, you know, coming here on parents' passports and so forth and considered undocumented, what are the other criteria factors that make you eligible to apply for this Windrush compensation? Because, you know, there's a lot of things been floating around on social media. Everybody thinks they're entitled, and like, you know, more money. That's what the argument is. So who is actually entitled to that compensation?
That's a really good question. I wish I could answer it better. Um, I would have to look up the scheme. My understanding is that a lot of the documentation is kind of a bit convoluted and a bit difficult, without really have to prove that you have been specifically affected by it. But obviously, with anything, the government doesn't want to kind of admit to their mistake and just hand out money. So it's always going to be a long process trying to get compensation from the government. My understanding is that people have been receiving the claims and have been receiving compensation. I know a lot of people aren't happy with the compensation received, and it is just kind of a difficult process, especially for the older generation. Trying to fill out forms online isn't always the easiest as well, which is something to consider as well. So yeah, I'm not sure on the specific criteria on how you get compensation, but that's a really interesting question. I might look into that actually after this.
Yes, please. Yes, please do. I must admit, I am one of the people that started the process, but like you say, the paperwork was quite ambiguous.
Yeah.
And because it's not clear, is it? It's not very
not clear. And in fact, it gave me the impression that it was asking about what prejudices or racism had we encountered, because of course I was doing the claim for my parents, you know, and it's like, but it's an everyday thing, so it's hard to list that type of thing. You know, so so in the end I gave up, but I have to say that the officers and people that I spoke to, but I suppose they're trained to sound like that, they sounded very helpful and encouraging, you know. And there was one guy that, you know, was like, I wish more people would apply. You know, we've got all this money sitting here waiting and people are just not following it through. You know, so it's quite hard. So we know where, like, the steps that you've taken. We know a couple of things that you've covered. Where would you like life to go, Anneliese?
I don't know. Like I said, doing a PhD is definitely on the table.
Have you got a subject? Would you stick with criminology or?
I think so. Yeah, I think I'd
Okay.
probably stick with criminology. Um, I don't know. I think I could definitely go into a job. I think as long as I'm in a job where I feel like, I don't know if it sounds a bit corny, but like I'm making a difference and I'm helping people, I think I'll be happy when I'm doing that, whatever that looks like, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
a 9 to 5 office job, I whatever that is, as long as I feel like I have a purpose, I think that's
Okay.
what's most important to me personally. Yeah.
Has that
That's
always been your mindset in terms of where you'd like to, what kind of job you'd be looking for? Has that always been your mindset, or
I
has
think
things made you develop that mindset?
I think studying criminology has made me develop that. I think obviously when I first got into uni, it's just kind of go to uni and then get a job and make loads of money. But studying criminology and seeing like the lives of other people, such as people who are affected by the hostile environment policy and the Windrush scandal. I also did an essay in university on the Grenfell Tower fire, which was really, really eye-opening. So like looking at that and seeing the way people's lives were affected and the way criminology can help explain that and explore that has kind of made me think, okay, life isn't just about making money. It's important to see how other people live and the challenges they face. So if I can be involved in helping people who are faced by these challenges, specifically challenges that are kind of orchestrated or created by the government, yeah, is really my goal. So yeah, definitely has changed over the years. Yeah.
You'll always be in work with that because there's always something created by.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You're supposed to laugh right now.
No, it's true though. It's like
No, she's
becoming
right.
like every year is a different another something else.
Yeah, no,
That's something
definitely.
else. So it's like, yeah, and it's sad, but it's just the facts, the reality of it all in it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So that's your very serious side, your studies and your discovering your exact purpose of what you do. What do you like to do to relax? You do relax, yeah?
I do relax. I do relax. I thought I finished university in I want to say October. So it has been kind of a period of floating, and I have had time to just kind of breathe a little bit. Um, I love to crochet, which I always call a bit of a granny hobby. But I do crochet a lot, which I love doing. My mum recently taught me how to sew, so I've been sewing bags and things like that. Um, I like to read. Me and my friends actually have a book club. We meet every Sunday on FaceTime, and we discuss chapters. So yeah,
Oh,
there's a few
wow.
things I do to wind down. Yeah, it's important to have that balance, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I can just so at Cambridge, I did another dissertation on ethnic minority magistrates. So I can
Okay.
Wow.
talk a little bit about that if you'd like.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
does that mean?
Yeah,
I've signed up twice to be a magistrate. I'm
really.
terrible. I sign up to things and never follow them through. But carry
Yes.
on.
So basically the magistrate system, just as a brief overview, um, so I think it's 95% of criminal cases go to the magistrate's court. So they deal with anything from TV license evasion, driving offences. You can even have things like robberies. It depends. There are crimes that they call either way offences, I think. So you can either go to a magistrate, or if it's just over that threshold of being quite serious, that's when it goes up to Crown Court. So things like murders and things will go up to Crown Court. But magistrates' courts will deal with most criminal cases. So magistrates do not need to have any legal qualifications. So I could, like Auntie Sugar said, she's applied to be a magistrate. I could apply. Beverly, you could apply to be a magistrate. No legal qualifications are needed, even though magistrates do hand down criminal convictions and sentences and things like that. So the whole point of the magistrate system is that it's meant to be a system where people are judged by their peers. So it's meant to be a reflection of society in terms of age, gender, race, and then kind of more recently, as we try and become more inclusive, disability, sexual orientation, things like that. And so I know that 13% of magistrates are of ethnic minority. And that does actually kind of line up with the population. So within England and Wales, around 10 to 13% of people are ethnic minority. However, when you look from like borough to borough, or like say London and the West Midlands, you get a high majority of ethnic minority people, whereas the magistrate numbers don't reflect that. So I just thought it'd be really interesting to try and get the perspectives of ethnic minority magistrates. So that's what I did. I interviewed, I think it was 25 ethnic minority magistrates. That was a big jump. Trying to get permission to speak to magistrates was just a whole drama in itself. Because I thought because magistrates are ordinary citizens, it'd be quite easy to interview them, but you do have to get permission from the courts, and it was a whole thing, but finally managed to get permission. And yeah, spoke to 25 ethnic minority magistrates in order to understand their experiences of being magistrates, and their experiences of the training process and the application process, and the experiences of their counterparts. So who are they sitting in court with? Yeah, and it was a really, really interesting, eye-opening piece of research. Very, very stressful, because obviously at my undergrad dissertation on the hostile environment policy, I think I interviewed, I think 5 or 6 people in total. So jumping from 6 people, and then the next year interviewing 25. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much stress it would be. But definitely worth it. Really, really enjoyable research once again.
So did they find that they're hitting a glass ceiling themselves, like they can see where they want to go, but are not going any further because of the environment they're in?
I'd say it was definitely a mixture. So the kind of things I focused on was, so for example, the training processes. So I asked them questions around within the training process, are issues of race and ethnicity talked about or considered? I want to say a majority of the magistrates I spoke to said that issues of race and ethnicity were touched on, but not in a real capacity where it's really, really discussed. Similar with the application and interview process. So I kind of asked questions like, when you were interviewed for the role of a magistrate, who interviewed you? So magistrates get interviewed by a panel of people, and the panel is supposed to be diverse, but a lot of the magistrates were saying that they were actually interviewed by an all-white panel. And so for someone of an ethnic minority to be kind of faced with an all-white panel, I think out of 25, 2 of them said that it was something that they kind of felt hindered their confidence a bit. Trying to step into a system that's meant to be inclusive and diverse, yet being faced with 3 white males interviewing them is kind of a juxtaposition.
I must admit, the first time I applied, it was my council that was encouraging, because I was, a member of the neighborhood watch and residents, blah, blah, and all this sort of thing. And they were like, we need to get more ethnic minority into the magistrates. We can't have white middle class men deciding on what's happening with somebody that they've never even experienced a fraction of the lifestyle that they've lived. And so that's how I kept, that was my first step into it. But for me it was the application. It just was going on forever, and I'm like, I got things to do, places to go, people to see.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. I did hear from a few magistrates that the application process is a bit convoluted and a bit long. And I think the interview process is 2 stages as well. So it can be a bit drawn out. But I think the point you made there is really important about having, white middle class men kind of making decisions for communities. Because I think it's not just about whether the magistracy is diverse, but it's also about public confidence. So as a young person of an ethnic minority, to be faced to, you've been in trouble with the law, you now find yourself in magistrate's court, to be faced with 3 white people, you wouldn't feel confidence in the system because you are meant to be judged by your peers. So I think it's really important, just from a public confidence standpoint, that the magistracy is diverse. But I think it is getting better. That is the kind of consensus that I was getting from magistrates, is that things are slowly getting better. They could be a lot better, but compared to 20, 30 years ago, they're definitely moving in the right direction. I think magistrates did mention that there are comments made by their white counterparts that they would consider racist comments, and that is something that they have to kind of combat every day. Magistrates saying, "Oh, why doesn't this person go back to where they came from?" And it's a bit scary that those people are passing down judgments on members of the community. But that's why it's so important to have people of ethnic minority within the system in order to kind of make that change from within. So yeah, a really, really interesting piece of research. We enjoyed it.
You've done some great stuff.
Yeah. What's your next research planned?
Good question. I think interviewing magistrates was really interesting. I'd love to expand that and try and interview other ethnic minority members of the criminal justice system. So barristers and lawyers and judges. But trying to get permission to talk to magistrates was difficult. So imagine trying to get permission to talk to judges. Impossible. So it's definitely something I'd love to do in the future, though.
Yeah, because my dad had a friend that was a barrister, and I remember as a youngster, when he used to come, he used to always, because he was always angry because of how he was treated. Because you're talking about 70s, a black barrister from Jamaica. So he always used to come with the stories of how he was treated and stuff like that within his working environment. So it would be interesting to follow this space to see what Anneliese is up to next.
Yes, because she's following all the difficult questions, the difficult areas, sort of thing. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what what you fit in between now and the PhD, because I get a feeling that you're itching to do something. September will come up and you'll be like, I'll just do this little course until I get to my PhD.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that happening. Yeah.
Well, anyway, our time is ticking down, so we're gonna kind of round up the conversation. So, do you think we've covered all that? Well, you got lots more to share, but what we can share in this segment at this moment. Is there any further questions that you wanted to add as well, Sugar?
No, she's covered everything that I would have liked her to talk about.
The way you say, yes, we did have more we do want fast, but we'll just stop with that for right now.
No.
Once again, Anneliese, thank you for joining us this evening and sharing your extensive knowledge that you've built so far. And interesting to see where you go with it in the future. So we will check back in and fast.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really enjoyable. Thank you.
Absolutely a pleasure. So that's a wrap from us.
Much.
Remember to support the community, by liking, sharing, commenting, and
subscribing.
Yes, subscribing. Sorry, we forgot about that. Each week I forget something. I've got it now. I've got it on lock. I've covered everything now. I forget. Subscribe. Yeah.
Excellent.
All right then.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.
See you. Bye.
Bye.